Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Marketplace. Coming up this afternoon, government announces 8 tax reliefs in the 2024 budget to essentially reduce the burden on businesses and consumers. But are those reliefs enough? We have analysis coming up. Also coming up this afternoon, we get reaction from the agri sector as government allocates 1 billion cedis to phase 2 of the Planting for Food and Jobs program and announces exemptions on import of agri equipment and input. Plus, President Kwawu lays foundation for phase 2 of Terminal 3 project at the Tema port.
Indeed, the substantial investments made in the harbor since 2017, together with the state-of-the-art equipment we see today, have tripled the port's capacity. This indicates that Ghana is poised for unprecedented trade growth.
My name is Daryl. Kwawu. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. And well, first up, the government has announced 8 tax reliefs in the 2024 budget to essentially reduce the burden on businesses and consumers. They include the extension of the zero rate of value-added tax on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years, the waiving of import duties on imported electric vehicles for public transport for a period of 8 years. Making his presentation before Parliament, the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, said a simplified tax return will be introduced as a means of promoting voluntary compliance as part of the modified taxation scheme for individuals in the informal sector. Joining me on Zoom to assess these tax measures is Jijeje Fiacho, who is Partner Tax Reporting and Strategy at PwC Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I want to begin with the tax reliefs, whether or not they are adequate to reduce the burden on businesses and Ghanaians. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, so I was asking if the tax reliefs announced by the government, if they are adequate to reduce the burden on businesses and on Ghanaians.
Well, quite clearly, businesses would have loved more tax reliefs, and equally consumers would have also loved more. But I see quite clearly what government is doing here. There's also a big need for the country to raise revenue. So government is finding the balance. And you argue that businesses will want more. But then the minister admitted quite clearly that, well, this is still a time to tighten our belt because we really are not out of the economic challenges that we are in. So the minister has only found a fair balance, if you ask me, around giving those reliefs.
Yeah, and there are many who are expecting the COVID-19 levy, which they say has served its purpose, and the e-levy to be removed or reviewed. Should that have been the case?
Yeah, so quite clearly, when a tax has a name that is connected to a particular event, you expect that tax to go away eventually. But then, where I sit as a tax practitioner, I can clearly see that the government needs the revenue. What would that mean then? Should it be a change of the name of the tax, or should a new tax be introduced? So quite clearly, at this point, if government had taken them off, perhaps they would have just introduced a new tax in a new name, because there's still some great need for revenue on the part of government to cover for its expenditure.
Yeah, and we've got reactions from the business community to these tax measures. For instance, Govt and the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry really disappointed, saying that it's only going to worsen their situation. Your thoughts on their reaction? Is it doom and gloom? What do you think?
Quite clearly, it is challenging. So, because of how that tax was introduced, it is connected to the transaction, so the value added tax. So, it has a pressure on prices, it has a pressure on consumers, and all of that. So, I can understand what Guta and the others are saying. But you need to also always juxtapose that with government looking for revenue. So it is challenging, I would say, perhaps not to use the expression doom and gloom, but then we're trying to find the right balance here, and I think that is where government is doing its best to see where to find that balance.
Oh, and keeping at the back of our minds that we are on an IMF program. So my next question, is the country now doing well with this tax mobilization? Or according to the finance minister, total revenue and grants for the first 8 months was estimated at 79.1 billion cedis. That's about 9.3% of GDP, and 2.8% lower than the program target of 82.2 billion cedis. Your thoughts?
So I think that the IMF program is one that has been helpful. I think we needed it. We've seen some stability over the last couple of months because of the program. We definitely need to do more. Our contribution to GDP, the tax revenue contribution to GDP is quite low, and it is low, very much below what we even see in the regions as well. So again, quite clearly, there's more room, and I think that should be coming from what we describe as the informal sector. Let's expand the tax net so that we can actually raise the right revenues commensurate with our economy.
Well, you say we need to do more. What should we be doing? What's the way forward?
So my big one is expand the tax net, not deepen it, right? And that is what has gone on for a while. We still go back to the formal sector through audit and many other initiatives to actually collect more taxes for them. But we are seeing quite a big informal sector, one that perhaps we haven't described in this clear detail because it has so many layers. And I think that is where our taxes should be coming. So widen the tax net, and that is what government should be looking at. Year on year, pick a particular subsector of the informal sector and say, I am bringing you into the net, the tax net, and collect the taxes and look at those gains and try to replicate those in subsequent subsectors as well.
How would you describe our macroeconomic indicators? Are we trending in the right direction? Having listened to the finance minister, are we following the right path under an IMF bailout program?
Well, like the IMF bailout program is, again, we design a program and we are bound to follow it, right? And a part of that, and I think the minister acknowledges, a part of that is also to make sure you mobilize revenue. I look at it very much from the tax perspective, and I say, do we still have opportunities to mobilize revenue? And I think so. I think about property taxes. I think about how we can make local governments also mobilize revenue. All of that is required. And I think we need to bail ourselves out of perhaps the challenges that we have. And I dare say government is doing its best to make sure that it follows the program because we are trying to get out of this economic situation. But while we are at it, we need to actually make sure that we show up our revenues through, again, expanding the tax net and also attacking all those areas that have been quiet for a while. And my big pick is property taxes and streamline that area and be able to raise revenue from those areas too.
All right, I'm going to ask you one final question. This for, our audience watching who have listened to the finance minister and wondering, what does this budget mean for me going forward? Is my life going to get better? What should I look forward to in the next year based on this budget? What would you say?
Well, it's not some, there's still some challenges ahead, I would say. But I see it this way, that the minister quite carefully has considered and found a certain balance. And when I say that, if you look at the individual taxation, even though there's need for revenue, there's some modification that is being looked at the minimum tax band, and they are not looking to expand that. I think that we should still commit pretty much to get our country out of the challenges that we have now. But it's not, I won't say that it's entirely rosy, that we should be looking at prosperity, but there are challenges ahead, and we should work together to actually be able to weather the storm.
DJ Fiajo, tax partner at Deloitte at PwC, thank you so much for speaking with us this afternoon. I appreciate your time. Well, Finance Minister Kenneth Reta says an amount of 1 billion cedis has been allocated to the Millennium Development Authority to implement the Economic Enclave project. The project, which is part of the Ghana Cares program, seeks to create a viable ecosystem for the private sector to engage in commercial farming to significantly expand Ghana's productive capacity in rice, tomato, maize, soy, vegetables, and poultry. Now, according to the Finance Minister, investing in the sector will complement government's Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2 initiative. Joining us to discuss this some more is Anthony Morrison, who is Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. It's been quite a while we had you on the program. Thanks for joining us. What do you make of this move by the government, and how would it further boost the agri sector, do you think? Can you hear me, Anthony? Can you hear me, Anthony?
Right. Daryl, thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to your charity workers and your good self. This is a welcoming news to some extent, having an economic enclave program, but I must also be quick to add that to have an economic enclave program doesn't require, or it requires some huge government commitment. Our national importation bill is well over $10 billion, and you expect government to be more deliberate and more strategic about investment in food. If you look at the budget allocation for the agriculture sector, that is about $53 million. And if you look at the amount of money government is actually allocating from the World Bank Fund for the disaster, which is about $40 million. That should also tell you that, in reality, government annual budgetary allocation towards the agriculture sector shouldn't be anything less than $1 billion. In that is the only way that in the next 10 to 15 years, we can be working towards attaining our food security status, a country that is more robust with its food systems, and also working to look at the food price build-up, where the gaps are, where the interventions should be coming from, and where critically we should be looking at increasing the employment generation, and also to reduce the skills importation in the industry. So there is quite a number of things that to be done. And particularly looking through the data as the minister shared yesterday, we were a bit alarmed by the fact that we saw some data being projected for 2021 to certain 2023, which we thought that, for instance, there was a projected of 6.3% sector growth, which we thought that it should be between 2017 and 2022, and not 2021, because it should be year-on-year performance. PFJ may have attributed partially towards that performance, especially in the horticulture sector, which is the vegetable sector. So we kind of want to be looking at data consistency, in that this kind of data, especially budget of this nature, then informs private sector investment into the agriculture sector. So this data must be verified and validated, and if this data is not, then we will also be having a different challenge with government, its own policies, and also how government ought to work towards attaining the targets that is set for itself.
Well, the finance minister also announced exemptions on the import of agric machinery and inputs. Great start. I mean, it's one of the things that stakeholders in the agric sector have been complaining about, isn't it?
Yes. If you quite remember, earlier in the year, we had a press conference on this. We had to write several press statements with regards to the fact that these were the challenges we're having on the agriculture front. So it's a welcoming news for us in the industry. We need to also deepen that news with the fact that there is also a 5% extra tax on the profit. We need to look at removing that. Look, the first and foremost responsibility of every government is to feed its own people. So if a government cannot make the requisite and adequate financial commitment to feeding its own people, and the private sector that are struggling, some selling their land, some are selling their properties to invest in agriculture, and government continues to tax them, I think that is the most wicked thing to be done. And this for me, it shouldn't even have taken place at the first place. Government must even be making provisions and enticing the private sector, giving them some tax exemptions, giving them some tax benefit to go into agriculture. But in Ghana, is the opposite, and it's sometimes very demeaning, very sad to see the reality. If you go to the poultry farms, just go to the Wenya or go to Somanya, go to Central Region, Awembrim and the likes. You see 50,000 poultry bed capacity that have been lying down for the past 3 years. And these were investment of more than 1 million that has gone into some of these areas. So we need to be deliberate. We need to protect the industry. We need to make sure that we shield the industry against foreign competition. We shield the industry against unnecessary importation.
Okay.
We shield the industry against certain things. And it's important. We can't do without food. We can't produce our food from the lab. It's only the field that is able to give us food. And we need to make sure that the critical investment that needs to go into it is made available.
So overall, did the budget address the current challenges faced by the sector with the measures that we've had announced by the finance minister help improve the sector's contribution to economic growth?
No, this is certainly not the kind of budget that will improve a sector that is bereft with importation of over $10 billion. No. You see, government is a signatory to the Malabo and the Maputo Declaration. That requires government to be making at least 3% of budgetary allocation to the agriculture sector. So if we are to be making any meaningful impact towards Ghana's food security drive, we need to be making available no less than $1 billion annually for the next 10 years. Commitment towards agriculture funding, financing is a very important thing. Just today, we're talking about nutrition and how nutrition is impacting on health. And you can't possibly be talking about nutrition when your food production system is so. If you go to the hospitals, medical doctors are saying we need to increase our nutritional balance. How do you do that when you don't produce good food? So we should understand that food production is as important as our health.
Okay.
We need to control our food systems. If you do not control your food systems, your health system is also not in your hands.
So in 30 seconds, what are the outstanding issues you want the government to tackle if you could do a 3-point submission, if you like?
Remove all existing taxes on agriculture. Remove all existing impediments that are impeding investment in agriculture. Sort out all the bad roads that are making it difficult for us to transport already produced foods into the city, and also make sure that we provide to the private sector reliable funding, which takes into consideration the production sector, for us to be able to access a 24-hour financing intervention, for us to be able to export, or to be able to produce for the sake of the industry and other sectors of the economy.
Anthony Morrison, I appreciate your time with us, Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. Thank you. Well, to another story we are following for you, President Kwawu has laid the foundation for the commencement of work for Phase 2 of the $1.5 billion Terminal 3 project by Meridian Port Services, MPS, as part of Tema Port expansion. He says the port expansion is crucial to international trade as government continues to provide the enabling environment for businesses to thrive. The president also commissioned 15 gantry cranes worth $50 million as part of the ongoing project, which began in 2016. Here's more in this following report.
The second phase of the port expansion project is considered an important part of Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority's master plan of port infrastructure, which covers 270,000 square meters, utilizing 40 million high-standard pavement blocks required for heavy crane operations. This expands Terminal 3 holding capacity from 100 hectares to 127 hectares, with total completion in 2025. The terminal currently has 12 key cranes and 41 yard cranes, positioning Tema Port as an efficient port in sub-Saharan Africa, as leading global shipping lines make the port a preferred one. President Kwawu underscored the importance of port infrastructure.
Through our partnership with international partners and friends of Ghana, our nation has established a world-class trade infrastructure. Not only does this infrastructure meet global standards, but it also signals to investors, both domestic and foreign, that Ghana is open for business. It is no mean achievement, as it reflects the immense potential of our nation. Indeed, the substantial investments made in the harbor since 2017, together with the state-of-the-art equipment we see today, have tripled the port's capacity. This indicates that Ghana is poised for unprecedented trade growth with our strategic location.
The expanded port has 1.4 kilometers quay with 4 deep berths equipped with container handling gantry cranes and terminal operating system, having the capacity to receive some of the world's biggest cargo ships carrying up to 18,000 containers. To ensure good turnaround time, Transport Minister Kwawu says there will be expansion of road linking the port to the Accra-Tema motorway.
And I can say on authority that, Mr. President, that's your marching order. We are going through the legal regimes, and I can assure you, my information from the MD of MPS and GPHA that they are nearing completion in terms of documentation, and I can assure you that by the first quarter of next year, you will see the construction starting.
According to Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Port Services, Mohammed Samara, the acquisition of the gantry cranes worth $50 million and the project will have direct impact on the economy.
The vision that we want to see for Ghana is not to have a fancy, port with a big crane technology, but also the enabling factor for other trade and industries to be developed, around it, so it can create a job to the wider team and audience. In this facility, we have created about 3,000 jobs. Permanent, and plus during the construction we added in phase 1 5,000, and this job will add probably another 3,000 jobs, But that's not what it is. What it is if tomorrow factories start to set up in Tema Township, those factories, how many are they going to employ? And this is the key thing, the economic impact.
Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, GPHA, which is a joint partner in Meridian Port Services, says collaborative efforts amongst the partners and stakeholders will help provide efficient services. Sandra Opoku is the director of Tema Ports.
That we had to collaborate with MPS and their partners, and that is what we are seeing today. Now you saw one of the biggest vessels to come to Tema Port, and because of the width of that vessel and how big and the number of containers on it, they need gantry cranes like these. These are the state-of-the-art gantry cranes to be able to operate. And certainly GPHA, as the landlord, we are also prepared, and so we've also brought in new tugboats. You saw the tugboat pushing in the vessels. So we work hand in hand with our partners, and this is what we're seeing today.
President of Africa Global Logistics, Philippe Labon, says the project positions Ghana as a trade hub.
And since it's becoming a hub, that the largest vessel will come, they will have frequent calls in Tema, allowing the producer of Tema products, of Ghanaian products, to export all over the world, and especially in Africa, to support trade and to help business grow. And therefore, it helps to create jobs.
Meanwhile, Regional Managing Director, Africa and Europe for APM Terminals, Igor van den Essen, indicated that the Tema Port Expansion Project, since its inception, has created about 5,000 direct jobs. The Terminal 3 project is expected to play an important role in the African Continental Free Trade Area, with a unified market of 1.3 billion people and a combined GDP of over $3 trillion, aside employment opportunities for construction workforce and its valuable skills for the future.
And finally, the Ghana Statistical Services launched the International Data Masterclass aimed at supporting Ghana's growth in data literacy. According to Deputy Government Statistician Faustina Frimpong-Ingwa, the Masterclass is needed to help government and leaders take good policy decisions that would inure to the benefit of the public and contribute to economic development.
The International Data Masterclass, which was launched by the Ghana Statistical Service, is an online course designed by the UK's Office for National Statistics to put data and evidence at the center of decision-making. The service also launched the Digital Census Atlas and the GSS Learning Hub demo. According to the Deputy Government Statistician, Faustina Frimpong-Ingwa, understanding data is key to making good public policies.
And our data fair in the sense that what we do is we crunch numbers. But surprisingly, people are not too comfortable when it comes to numbers because they think it's too technical. But we thank the UK office for bringing it lower level such that non-statisticians who make decisions on our behalf will be able to understand and appreciate how to use numbers in their policy making and again in planning decisions for us. Our partnership with ONS has been long one, starting from 2018. And thank you for helping us to transform and again to modernize.
Deputy British High Commissioner Keith McMahon said the UK was committed to supporting Ghana's growth in data literacy.
Data starts on housing, schooling, health, etc. All are vital for governments to support policy and decision making. All of this is really important in order to help governments make the right choices about how they spend their money and how they perhaps grow the economy but also support of their citizens. The UK is committed to fostering a culture across government where decisions are grounded in robust data-driven insights in order to leave no one behind. The UK continues to collaborate with the Ghana Statistical Service through the UK's Office for National Statistics, Technical Assistance and the Capacity Building Partnership.
And that's the Masterclass, there's a Masterclass Marketplace. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. Our top story, the economy projected to be valued at over 1 trillion cedis in 2024. myjoyonline.com/business. I got the guys in the control room screaming. The Marketplace returns tomorrow, same time.